Hello and welcome to Mariah Moon Life Artistry. This is our course, turning our failure into fuel. It's gonna be yummy. And I'm gonna teach you some really simple ideas to begin to change that subconscious programming that you're running on right now so you can improve your life, so you can feel more possibilities are available to you. So first you're gonna take a brush, any size brush, maybe like a medium-sized brush. Cheap brushes are fine, cheap brushes are great. You do not need to have a lot of money to paint or to create art. You could burn some sticks and use charcoal if you were really hard up. You could use a canvas. I'm gonna recommend a canvas. They have that nice white background so our color shows really nicely on them. But if you don't have a canvas, grab a piece of cardboard, grab a piece of scrap board somewhere, grab a piece of whatever you have lying around. Grab a piece of old cloth or an old sheet that you don't like, stretch it over something that's rectangular or square with a flat surface and paint on that. Like, there are so many possibilities, and just don't get hung up by feeling limited by your resources. So I've got a jar of water here. I'm gonna wash my brushes in that. I've got a little palette. Doesn't matter, you could use anything. I've used this like a million times. And it was a freebie to me, so, keep it real. Times can be hard. So you're just gonna go ahead and you're gonna get a yellow and a red. So go ahead and get that paint. Then I want you're gonna mix right on your canvas. So you're just gonna take a nice blob of yellow right in the center there. And then you're gonna get some red. Palettes get messy. I want you to stir it up until those two colors mix. So we've got yellow and we've got red. And we're gonna move that together until we create a new color. I'm just gonna take it out nice and white because I still have paint on my brush. And this painting is gonna be done in so many layers. You're not gonna worry about how things look as we go. It might be a challenge, but that's all right. All right, so now you've got your circle, maybe a spiral, and it should be green. So look at your canvas and make sure that your circle is green in the center. Okay, wait, did that not make sense to you? You were supposed to make green on your canvas. Right. So if you have a little voice inside your head that says, I'm not good enough, it's gonna pop up and it's gonna say, hey, you failed, you didn't make a green dot. And I might even get a little anxious, because that's how our subconscious mind works. However, you didn't fail. I told you to put yellow and I told you to put red together and that makes orange. Obviously, I do know that. Might have just scared some people like, oh my gosh, she does not understand how colors work, or she's colorblind. I am neither. So in looking at your canvas, I just want you to notice that you follow directions and you ended up with a product, an end result, and it wasn't it's not what you were asked for. So you could definitely look at this like, oh shoot, I failed. Or you could simply look at this and go, oh, okay, well, I just got some feedback from what I did, which is I didn't have the right information to do this painting how she asked. Right? So that's where we are gonna turn our failure into feedback. So if I say, go ahead and paint a square on your canvas, and you paint a square, so we're gonna go ahead and do that. So go ahead and pick whichever color you want. So we're starting with this orange background, but whatever colors you're called to, go ahead and grab those. You don't need to have orange or any specific colors. It's just whatever feels good to you. And also, this is probably not even gonna show through by the time we get done with all of our layers. So I'm just gonna grab a blue, and you're gonna make a square, and you're gonna make it a little bigger than your circle. I just like using up that paint. Some designs in there. have no idea what we're gonna end up with because that's not the purpose of this painting. We are just moving along here. We're just gonna see what happens. All right, so you painted a square on your canvas, and now go ahead and look at your square, and then if you were to imagine that you had a ruler, is it really a perfect square, right? And again, if our mind is hypercritical, maybe you even grabbed a ruler to make your square, or maybe you taped it off to make a perfect square. But our painting isn't about perfection. It's really just about becoming aware of our own, I love the word mentations, just like what's happening in our minds, that self-talk. And your square doesn't have to be a perfect square. Mine actually is probably a little more of a rectangle. And once upon a time when I was really critical of myself, like I would feel like I was failing. And the fear of failure was really, really big in my life. I always remember this quote by Norman Vaughn, and it was, "Dream big and dare to fail." But I was always so petrified of failing, and this idea of failure popped up so often that I would just avoid doing things. So just work all that paint into your canvas and just start to think on that. Like, how has failure affected your life? Have you been afraid to succeed because you might fail? Are you limiting yourself and holding yourself back from doing things you want to try because you could fail? So let's just take a little more blue here, and let's just make some marks outside that square. Let's just move them around in whatever way feels good. Just kind of free forming it here. And what if we began to think about our failure in a different way? What if we began to notice that our failure has actually been misnamed, and it's actually just feedback, okay? What if you have been divorced? What if you thought that was the worst thing possible and that you failed? I'm sure some of you have probably been divorced and you can relate, or maybe even just a relationship. And when you get out of that relationship, you say things like, I failed at this relationship, I failed at this marriage. So what if we change it? What if we change that story, right? Because this is so cool, we're humans and we can do that. We can change our story now, even though it's in the past. We can change how we begin to look at it. And what if I change that story to, the person I was with didn't respect my boundaries and I needed my boundaries respected? What if it was simply feedback? What if the fact that that relationship ended is simply feedback that says you need your boundaries respected, that say you need to be with somebody that you can trust, that say I want to live a more joyful life and I can't do that in this relationship? Can you look at it and say, this relationship was no longer serving me, and so it was time to leave? What if you looked at it as feedback? No failure. Like, get rid of that word failure. Like, did you fail? No. You just had an experience. You had an experience, and then it needed to change and it needed to evolve. And perhaps it wasn't serving you, and I'd be willing to bet it wasn't serving you if it ended. Something about it was not working. So that's feedback for you and the other person, but it's not a failure. It's just an experience. And we all grow and change throughout our lives. Just keep going. I'm just digging these lines out here. You're welcome to change whatever color you have on your canvas. All right, so let's think of some different situations. So let's say you failed a test, and maybe you went to college, maybe it was just like high school. You remember a test that you failed and you were like upset about it. You know, what could you change about that story now to look at it differently? Could you look at it and realize like, hey, I was not equipped with enough time maybe to study that. Or perhaps you weren't equipped with enough confidence. You know, maybe your feedback is, wow, I didn't have enough confidence at that time to complete that test. Or I didn't have enough confidence at that time to ace that test. Or perhaps it was, I had so much anxiety at that time that it was not a possibility for me at that time to pass it. And it's okay. And now you can see how we can start to shift our thinking into the fact that it's okay. It's okay. Everyone's going to have experiences, and everyone isn't going to have the same experience, and everyone's not going to do the same on a test or in a relationship. All right, I'm going to go for a little magenta here. I don't usually worry about mixing my colors unless they start to get mucky and brown. And so we're just going to start with a few words. So just take a moment, maybe take a pause here, and you've got your magenta or red or purple, or if you don't like that color at all, grab something you do like. So pick a color you do like, and we're just going to take a moment and think about feedback. If you had feedback, instead of looking at an experience in your life as failure, like a relationship, how about, I'm going to go with, from my own personal experience in what I would call failed relationships. It's not really a failed relationship. I can look at it now and realize, you know what? I respect my own boundaries. And you're just going to fill your canvas up with these lovely new perspectives that kind of kick failure to the curb. Like, failure is like actually feedback, and it's a really great tool. If we looked at feedback and thought, wow, this can really help me when I do this next time, or that I'm trying to evolve in how I respect myself or treat myself. I respect my boundaries. And if this works for you, feel free to use this affirmation. Feel free to write it however you want. I just like cursive. My boundaries. Let go of perfection. I just had to go sideways. It's all good. I respect my boundaries. Another affirmation or truth about feedback might be, I learn from feedback, right? Like, that's actually really powerful if you think about it. I learn from feedback. Whoa, so we just took this thing that is debilitating in many instances, this sense of failure, and turned it into something powerful. We turned it into a tool to grow and to learn. I learn from feedback. Right, so these are our kind of our base layer here, and this is kind of, in the future, when you look at this finished piece, you're gonna be able to look at it and think of all these things. And sometimes I like to take pictures of as I go, so I can remember kind of what I wrote on my painting, and go ahead and maybe even journal that. I highly recommend a little journal page, to jot something down about this, and maybe even free write. I respect my boundaries. I learn from feedback. I'm just gonna write feedback is my friend. Just gonna remind myself. So I personally have really struggled with failure. I mean, there's a lot of instances in my life where I was really consumed by this idea that I failed. And like, there was nothing worse than failing. And then as my perspective started to shift, it just seems unreasonable in my mind now to even consider that like my worth is based on accomplishing something that I set out to accomplish. Right? Usually when we get married, we set out to accomplish that marriage, staying together, which if you look at statistics, it's not even realistic. Not to say it can't be done, but we also have to respect ourselves. Feedback is my, you know what, I'm just gonna go with ally on this one. now let's move this just a little bit. From just feedback into success, into what is it that if you completely eradicated failure from your life and you no longer felt like you were a failure, if you no longer felt like you might fail and you're so worried about it because then you're going to judge yourself, if you let go of that, what's left? Feel free to grab a different color. I'm just going to use up my magenta here. So this may or may not sound true to you, but it's still a great affirmation to affirm, to work towards, right? That self-love, that can be difficult, but just, I love me. If you have not learned how to love yourself, how can we ever expect other people to love us how we want to be loved? Because we don't know. We don't know yet how we want to be loved because we've never given it to ourselves. We've had that external source. I love me. Even if it's just an intention that I love me is my intention, that is beautiful and that is fine too. Oh, look at that. It ended up saying all me. I love all me. So you can take your painting as a spiritual practice and feel really guided in what you're doing. Or you can take it from a really logical perspective. But if you really give it the time and the effort to think about it, that soulful spiritual experience, it's gonna creep in. Like, it's gonna let you know now, it's gonna creep in. It's gonna happen. And so I'm gonna go ahead and start throwing some yellow on here. And for me, when I think about success, when I think about, taking what I once thought was failure, transforming it into feedback and then using it to power whatever it is I'm gonna do next, it's like nourishing food. And often that nourishment for me is the sun. Like, I think of how good those sunshine rays feel on me. And so I'm just going to go ahead and throw a sun right here in the middle. You can choose any symbol or any image that works for you. And we're just gonna fill in a little bit more of this blank space here. So I'm just gonna move right around that dot I have in the center. And I love this dot in the center because it's here to remind me that this is feedback. It's not a green dot, it's an orange dot. Feedback is, that lady gave horrible instructions. I didn't have the right instructions. There was no sense of failure. This might stay, or you might just know it's there in the end. So maybe as you're moving around your canvas with whichever color you're working with now, you're just thinking about what you've held yourself back. All right, my color's getting a little bit muddy here. So you're just thinking about things where you were too scared to fail to try. So you didn't even try. So maybe you have to think on that for a little while, or maybe one pops up right now and you're like, oh my gosh, I really want to do this thing and I'm just way too scared because I might fail. But if you didn't think you're going to fail, if you just thought, I'm going to try this, it might go well, it might not, but all I can gain from this is feedback. Right? If all you can gain from this experience is feedback, it's not so scary. Like, it's just feedback. If you try something and you're not successful at completing it, well, that's feedback. Okay, so why didn't you complete it? Maybe you stopped liking it. Maybe you decided actually it's not what you want to do. That's just feedback. It's not failure, it's feedback. Maybe you had an injury. I started a drumming program last year and I really loved it and it was like amazing. And in the very last module, I sprained my wrist really, really bad and I could not use my wrist for months and I had to kind of watched the whole class pass me by, and I couldn't participate. So I definitely didn't fail, but I most certainly didn't graduate when everyone else did. I still haven't graduated, actually, and it's all good because I love the practice. So I'm also finding that I'm putting my time and my energy into things that I really love versus things that I want to accomplish and then feel really beholden to that end product. I don't feel beholden to the graduating of drumming, because the drumming itself is nourishing my life. The painting practice is nourishing my life. Not beholden to the outcome. And so often we don't get to choose the outcome anyways, if you really think about it. So think about something that you want to do that the fear of failure has held you back from doing. Right? Okay, so now you're imagining that same thing as feedback. If you did that experience, you know, what kind of possible feedback might you get? And some might be uncomfortable, sure. But if you get that feedback, then you could do it differently if you wanted to continue to pursue it. So if you have feedback, you don't repeat the same steps that took you to a result that you didn't want. So now with that feedback, you can choose different steps and approach it differently, and you're going to have a different result. Well, I'm just going with this hot sun here. All right. So just notice if any other affirmations have come up for you that you want to add in. I'm just gonna throw in here, I believe in me. So no matter what happens, no matter what I experience, I believe in me. I believe I can get through it. I know I can get through it. You think about all the hard things you have gone through in your life, especially with traumatic things, like you're probably a rock star because humans go through so much and we forget to give ourselves credit. Like all the credits. I believe in, here's me again. All right. A bit of a me painting. Just move the paint however you feel called to move it. You have no idea what this is going to end up as at all. I mean, I don't either. We're gonna move with the paint. We're gonna see what happens. And then all these layers are creating this powerful piece that is just full of all these affirmations and all this color that you personally chose, while realizing you have an amazing tool called feedback that you haven't been tapping into, or maybe you have been tapping into it and now you're gonna tap into it even more, because you're gonna start to notice there are a lot of feedback opportunities in life. So you're gonna start to really use it. So let's go with something that feels powerful. I'm gonna pick a different color. I'm gonna go with a purple here. Kind of got purples blended in here between that blue and magenta already. I'm just using, close it again. I'm just using Artist Loft Level 1. I really like this paint. It's nice and creamy and fun. But I also really love cheap craft paint from, like, I'm allowed to say Walmart. I use it from Walmart. Anywhere. There's like 50-cent craft paint that I like to use. And I'm gonna hit my purple with a little bit of yellow, just for a slightly lighter purple because it's really dark. So let's lighten that up just a little bit here. And brilliant blue. All right. So powerful. Just close your eyes for a moment and just picture like something powerful, just an image or a shape that comes to you that just feels like strength and power and courage. It could be a shape, it could be a color, it could be a plant. Maybe you're really fond of drawing animals and there's an animal that speaks to you about strength. and you could draw that. When you're ready, open your eyes. And I just find, I'm coming back to it again, just those rays of sunshine are just so powerful. They're so powerful. They like heat our entire planet and all of us and help grow our food and create vitamin D in our skin. So I am just going to express those powerful rays of sun. This nice blue. Blue is such a lovely, bold color here. My purple turned into blue, so now it's transforming into purple. I am not picky about which color it really is. I just like a nice, bold color. Right? And now I'm getting these lovely sunflower vibes here. And so the beauty of painting like this is that I didn't have an end game. I used to practice art with like this end image in my mind, and I couldn't make it happen. And I would be so frustrated. But I'd really be frustrated because I showed up to the canvas thinking I wasn't good enough, or my sketchbook, and I'm really thinking, you know what, I'm just not good enough, and then I'm trying it anyways. And then of course, my subconscious goes, oh, well, we think we're not good enough, so let's just go ahead and be not good enough. And so I couldn't get it right. So this style of painting where you just move with your paint, you just move with the images and you just kind of see what unfolds, it can be really powerful. I have no critiques of myself right now. If you notice critiques coming up, just let them go. There's no end game here. There's no right or wrong. There's just paint. There's just movement, fluidity, and you reaffirm. There's you reaffirming that you choose to listen to feedback. You listen to feedback. You learn from feedback. You welcome feedback. I'm just going to add that I welcome. Might use a little wonky in here. What if you welcome feedback? Next time you try something and it's hard, you really wanted it, and it doesn't work out the way you wanted, can you stop yourself before going into those mentations, those thoughts of judging yourself based on some performance, and say, I welcome this feedback. I welcome this feedback. I bet if you did, you'd have a different outcome than if you played the spiral failure game. I'll probably have that work out. All right. So wherever you are on this particular piece, just either pause the video as I move on to the next steps, or if you've already kind of completed or you just want to listen and move along, that's fine too. Just make sure you give yourself enough time to complete whatever it is you're working on. There's no rush. You can pause the video, you can come back. It's the beauty of technology. All right. So next step, I'm going to grab another orange. It's kind of a yellowish orange. It's a cadmium yellow. So I keep calling it orange. So it looks really orange in the tube. A little more yellow. It's kind of that school bus yellow. Mystery solved. School bus yellow is cadmium yellow, which looks orange. Now, I'm just going to kind of move into the spaces in between my sun rays. Just a little more color. And again, I did not wash my brush. You can wash your brush or switch brushes at any time. I just kind of been enjoying this and I didn't even think to switch to a different brush. This is totally my favorite brush. It's a number 6. It is really nice. I use it for watercolors as well. So again, I like my colors to sort of have that gradient movement from from a clear color to a little bit murkier. And that is just kind of my preference. So your preferences are gonna show up while you leave the critiques out of it. If you like it, keep it. If you don't like it, go over it. That is the most awesome thing about painting with acrylics. It's really fun. You could even turn this video off right now and come back to it in a week if that's what you needed to do. Build layer upon layer. Or maybe you want a little more to shine through, right? So right here, I'm gonna move my yellow, but not in a thick way like the other ones. All right, so this is just an example. I'm probably gonna go over this because I kind of want that cohesive look on my canvas. But, you know, you can move something like this and then you've got those other colors kind of shining through there. So you decide whatever's gonna work for you. If you have an awesome idea, go for it. Especially if you just suddenly have an idea, I encourage you so much to go for it. Don't worry about ruining your painting. Just go with it and you can be amazed at what appears on your canvas. It's so much fun. And if you're kind of like, hey, I've never done this before, I do not want to go with my own ideas, you can just kind of follow along and just kind of remember that this canvas is yours. And this canvas is all about you embracing feedback in your life so you can feel more whole and like realize that you're this limitless being. Feedback is just another tool in your toolbox to help you move into that limitlessness. It's a super long word and it's funky to say and I just love it. It's just kind of a powerful word for me. It's just like remembering that we're not tied to our expectations. If we let our expectations kind of go by the wayside sometimes, we'd be much better off in our actual success. So we are retraining our subconscious right now even. Just by doing this practice right here, we are saying, or maybe perhaps you're just hearing, these words about feedback and that we're embracing feedback, and then we're painting these words and then we're painting colors to support those words and this idea, and it just becomes this multi-layered message to your subconscious that says, hey, we want to play in the realm of feedback, not failure. So the more we add to our canvas and the more we maybe even speak out loud these affirmations and intentions of our canvas, the more powerful this message is going to be to our subconscious, because it needs those multi-layers to transform. All right, I am just gonna paint along here. Remember to pause anytime you need for the video. I'm probably just gonna speed through this section here. All right, so I just flipped my canvas over, which gave me a whole new perspective. And now it's kind of giving me like this different vibe. And so I encourage you to move your canvas in different directions as we move through this, and you decide more imagery and colors that you want to add to your canvas. It's always nice to turn it around and kind of get a feel for how it looks in a different position, because maybe your canvas doesn't like the original way that you set it up. So I am going to continue on with this, and then you will go ahead and start the next video.